I rose slowly, breath trembling in my chest, and delivered a toast that sliced through the restaurant like shattered glass. To being free, single, and searching. Chairs stopped, forks froze. Even the music seemed to choke mid-note. Terrence clinked his flute against mine with a violent snap, champagne splashing over my fingers. I stared at the man I'd called my husband for 6 years, my partner, my promise, while he announced his freedom to the entire restaurant. My anniversary dinner had become my execution stage. With a flourish fit for a magician, Terrence dragged a gift box from under the table. His mother, Tamika, leaned forward with vicious excitement glittering in her eyes. His father's smirk carved into his face like a wound I'd seen coming but never admitted. "Go on. Open it," Terrence crooned, that syrupy, poisonous voice he used when he wanted to hurt me slowly. "I had it made. Just for you." My hands shook as I lifted the lid. Inside was a neatly folded black t-shirt, harmless until I opened it. Then the words slammed into me, 6 years of disappointment. Gas rippled around the room. The floor seemed to lurch under my feet. The cold shock tore through me so violently it felt like drowning in ice. This wasn't a joke, this wasn't a mistake, this was premeditated humiliation. Their family's entertainment, my public unraveling. And suddenly, every ignored warning, every late night at the office, every hollow conversation over bills and schedules clicked into place. The man who once swore to cherish me hadn't just grown distant, he'd been preparing to destroy me. "Working late again?" I'd asked 3 months earlier, watching him adjust his tie in our bedroom mirror. "Big client," he'd mumbled without meeting my eyes. "Don't wait up." I'd noticed the cologne then, not his usual scent, but something new. When he returned past midnight, he'd shower before coming to bed, claiming the office was stuffy. I accepted the explanation because the alternative meant acknowledging our marriage was failing. Our intimacy had evaporated. Terrence's touches became perfunctory, his kisses quick pecks lacking any real affection. When I initiated, he'd claim exhaustion or stress, rolling away to scroll through his phone with his back to me. The rejection stung, but I buried it beneath excuses about work pressure and bad timing. On Sundays, when we used to spend lazy mornings making breakfast together, Terrence started scheduling golf with his father or networking brunches I wasn't invited to attend. The house grew silent in his absence, and I found myself talking aloud just to hear a human voice. "We should plan something special for our anniversary," I'd suggested 6 weeks earlier, attempting to rekindle something between us. "Sure," he'd agreed with surprising enthusiasm. "I'll handle everything. It'll be memorable." The genuine smile that crossed his face should have warned me. Instead, I felt hopeful for the first time in months, believing he wanted to repair what was broken between us. I discovered the truth while doing laundry. Terrence usually emptied his pockets, but that day a crumpled receipt fell out when I tossed his pants into the washing machine. I almost threw it away without looking, but something made me smooth it open. It was from a custom t-shirt shop downtown, dated 3 weeks earlier. The description line read, "Black tee, white print, 6 years of disappointment." My stomach clenched as I read it again, not quite processing what it meant. A joke for a friend? A gag gift for someone else? The date on the receipt aligned with the day Terrence claimed to have worked late. I felt the foundation of my world shift beneath my feet. Sitting on the laundry room floor, surrounded by dirty clothes, I realized my husband was planning to humiliate me on our anniversary. The thought seemed too cruel to be real. Yet the evidence sat in my hand, impossible to misinterpret. That night, I studied Terrence across the dinner table, wondering how the man I'd pledged my life to could become this stranger planning my public shame. I searched for hints of the person I'd fallen in love with, but his eyes remained distant, occasionally checking his phone hidden beneath the table. "Everything okay? Okay?" he asked, noticing my stare. "Perfect," I lied, matching his false smile with one of my own. The next revelation came from an unexpected source. I'd begun frequenting a small cafe near my office, seeking solace in neutral territory away from our increasingly tense home. Brielle, a waitress there, gradually became familiar with my order and my face. "Rough day?" she asked one afternoon, setting down my latte. "Rough year," I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. Something in my tone must have resonated with her because she hesitated before asking, "Your last name wouldn't happen to be Mitchell, would it?" The question startled me. "It is. Why?" Brielle lowered her voice. "I also work weekends at Lorenzo's. Your in-laws are regulars." She paused, seeming to weigh her words. "I've overheard conversations about you that didn't seem kind." My heart pounded as she explained how she'd served Terrence, his parents, and occasionally another woman for dinner many Sundays. the same Sundays he claimed to be golfing or networking. They discussed an anniversary surprise with malicious excitement, specifying it would happen at Lorenzo's, the upscale Italian restaurant his mother adored. "I'm not supposed to get involved in customers' business," Brielle said, but it sounded cruel. I'd want someone to tell me. I thanked her with tears threatening to spill. As she turned to leave, I asked, "The woman with them, can you describe her?" "Blonde, mid-30s, designer clothes. She's never there when your husband is, only with your in-laws." Brielle hesitated. "They call her Tiana." Tiana, my mother-in-law's personal assistant. The pieces began aligning in a horrifying picture. Instead of confronting Terrence, I decided to investigate. Something inside me had hardened, a protective shell forming around the wounded parts of my heart. I deserved to know the full extent of his betrayal before deciding my next steps. I began by checking our credit card statements, finding regular charges at hotels on nights Terrence claimed to work late. There were jewelry purchases I'd never received and dinners at restaurants I'd never visited. The paper trail of deceit stretched back further than I'd imagined. One afternoon, while Terrence was at work, I searched his home office. Hidden in the back of his desk drawer, I found a burner phone containing hundreds of text messages between him and someone saved simply as T. The exchanges were intimate and detailed, including plans for their future together. Once the anniversary was handled, they discussed me in clinical terms like a problem to be solved. Terrence complained about my cooking, my appearance, even my devotion to him, twisting my loyalty into something pathetic. Reading their conversation felt like being stabbed repeatedly, each message another wound to my already bleeding heart. But beneath the pain, anger sparked. Who is he to judge me? Who were they to plan my humiliation as entertainment? I photographed everything, documenting each betrayal meticulously. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't face it unarmed. "Do you have any questions about the process?" the divorce attorney asked, sliding a folder of paperwork across her desk. I'd made the appointment impulsively after discovering the burner phone, needing to understand my options. Attorney Zendaya Harris had come recommended as someone who handled high-conflict divorces with discretion. "What about financial protection?" I asked, thinking of our joint accounts. "If you want to secure assets before filing legally, you're entitled to your fair share," she explained. "I'd recommend documenting everything now and moving your portion to separate accounts before any confrontation occurs. It's not hiding assets, it's protecting what's rightfully yours." The meeting lasted an hour, during which I outlined the evidence I'd gathered. Zendaya listened without judgment, taking careful notes. "It sounds like your husband and his family are planning something particularly vindictive," she observed. "Given that, I'd suggest being strategic rather than reactive." As she detailed potential approaches, something settled inside me, a cold, clear determination replacing the chaotic hurt. This wasn't just about ending a marriage, it was about reclaiming my dignity from people who planned to strip it away for their amusement. When I left her office clutching a folder of legal options, I felt different. Heartbroken, yes, but also resolute. The woman who'd entered that office had been desperate and wounded. The one who walked out was beginning to sketch the outline of a counterattack. Terrence had no idea what was coming. Neither did I, not yet. But I knew with absolute certainty that his toast to freedom would not go as planned. My newfound determination pushed me forward like a woman possessed. With legal advice fresh in my mind, I decided to follow the money before Terrence suspected anything. Our checking account showed normal activity, but when I dug deeper into our joint investment portfolio, alarm bells started ringing. Over the past 3 months, Terrence had systematically transferred small amounts, not enough to trigger notifications, but substantial in total to a separate account I had no access to. "That's odd," I whispered to myself, scrolling through the transaction history. A pattern emerged. $2,000 here, $1,500 there, always just below the notification threshold we'd set up. The transfers began exactly 4 months ago, right around the time Terrence's behavior had shifted from merely distant to actively secretive. I called our financial advisor, pretending everything was normal. "Mark, quick question about those recent transfers from our joint portfolio, the ones to Terrence's personal account. He mentioned you were saving for a big anniversary surprise." Mark sounded genuinely pleased for us. "Didn't want to spoil it by sending statements to your shared email." A chill spread through me. "Of course, just double-checking the numbers. How much has been moved in total?" The figure he quoted made my knees buckle, nearly $80,000. Almost half our liquid savings had been systematically siphoned away. The anniversary surprise wasn't just a humiliating t-shirt. Terrence was preparing to leave me financially vulnerable too. I thanked Mark casually and hung up before anger could seep into my voice. That same afternoon, I opened a separate account at a different bank and transferred my personal savings, money I'd inherited from my grandmother, out of our shared account. It wasn't much compared to what Terrence had taken, but it gave me breathing room. The search for financial documents led me to the attic, a space I rarely entered. Terrence had insisted on storing our important papers there in a filing cabinet he'd inherited from his father. The cabinet itself was a hulking metal monster covered in a layer of dust that suggested Terrence hadn't accessed it recently either. I found our mortgage papers and tax returns easily enough. But the bottom drawer contained something unexpected, a cardboard box labeled simply family. Inside were photo albums and newspaper clippings dating back 2 decades. Most featured Terrence's parents at various social events, testimonials to their status in our small community, but tucked at the bottom was a smaller album with a tarnished leather cover. The photos inside showed a different family than the one I knew. Tamika smiling genuinely, Quincy without his perpetual scowl, Terrence as a teenager with braces, and beside him in almost every shot, another boy a few years older. I flipped the album over, finding names and dates written in faded ink. Terrence and Deshawn, summer 1998. Deshawn? Terrence had never mentioned a brother. Digging deeper into the box, I found a newspaper clipping with the headline, "Local Student Wins Full Scholarship to Princeton." The grainy photo showed a serious young man with Terrence's jawline but different eyes, kinder somehow. The article identified him as Deshawn Mitchell, son of Quincy and Tamika, graduating valedictorian. Another clipping dated 3 years later mentioned rising financial star Deshawn Mitchell joining a prestigious firm in New York. Then nothing, as if he'd been erased from the family record. I sat back on my heels, dust motes dancing in the attic's dim light. 6 years of marriage, and Terrence had never once mentioned having a brother. "You didn't know about Deshawn?" Rania Johnson's eyebrows shot up nearly to her hairline. Our neighbor was in her 70s and had lived next door to the Mitchell family for decades. If anyone knew their secrets, it would be her. I'd brought her a homemade pie as a pretense for my questions, claiming I was putting together a family photo album for our anniversary. "Terrence mentioned a brother once, but never elaborated," I lied smoothly. "I thought it might be nice to include some childhood photos of them together." Rania's living room smelled of lavender and old books. She set her teacup down with a clatter. "Well, I'm not one to gossip, but that family did that boy wrong. Deshawn was the smart one, kind too. Quincy had his life all planned out. Ivy League education, then joined the family business, but Deshawn wanted to make his own path." According to Rania, the final break came after Deshawn discovered questionable accounting in his father's business and threatened to report it unless changes were made. He was cut off completely, name never spoken again in the family home. "And Terrence?" I prompted. "Were they close?" "Thick as thieves growing up, but Terrence always needed his parents' approval more than Deshawn did." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. After Deshawn left, Quincy and Tamika focused all their attention on shaping Terrence. Told him what to study, where to work, even who to date. My stomach clenched. Who to date? Rania patted my hand sympathetically. "They never thought anyone was good enough for their remaining son. When Terrence brought you home, Tamika spent weeks telling everyone you were temporary. Even your wedding, remember how they insisted on changing your colors from blue to burgundy? Tamika told my daughter it was because blue wasn't sophisticated enough for Mitchell family photos." I remembered the color change, how I'd given in to keep the peace. How many other decisions had been influenced by the Mitchell family's manipulation? "They control everything in Terrence's life," Rania continued. "That fancy job, Quincy pulled strings. Your house, Tamika found it. I've always wondered how much of your marriage was Terrence's choice and how much was their orchestration." I left Rania's with my mind spinning. Our entire relationship suddenly felt suspect, potentially just another checkbox in a life planned by Terrence's controlling parents. The final piece fell into place 3 days later. I'd been monitoring Terrence's emails. His password had remained our wedding date, despite my suggestion to change it regularly. Most messages were work-related, but one exchange with his mother made my blood boil. "Everything set for Saturday," Tamika had written. "Lorenzo's confirms our reservation for 7:00 p.m. Quincy thinks the t-shirt is too much, but I disagree. That girl needs to understand she never belonged in this family." Terrence's reply was brief. "T-shirt is fine. Dad will come around when he sees her face." My hands shook with rage. Not only had Tamika orchestrated my public humiliation, but she'd been the one to push for the t-shirt, and Terrence had eagerly agreed. A follow-up email included a receipt from Tamika's credit card, payment for the custom shirt I discovered earlier, plus a reservation deposit at Lorenzo's. She'd even specified a corner table for maximum visibility, according to her note. I'd spent 6 years trying to please these people, believing their coldness was just their nature. Now I understood the truth. They had never intended to accept me. I wasn't just fighting a failing marriage. I was up against an entire family system designed to control and ultimately discard me. In that moment, the last of my tears dried up. In their place grew something harder, more resolute. If the Mitchell family wanted war, I would give them one. But I needed an ally, someone who understood their tactics from the inside. I needed to find Deshaun Mitchell. Finding Deshaun Mitchell proved easier than I expected. A simple LinkedIn search revealed he worked as a financial consultant in Boston, just 3 hours from our suburb. His profile picture showed a man with Terrence's jawline but gentler eyes, dressed in a crisp suit that couldn't quite hide a rebellious edge. No mention of family appeared in his biography, just academic credentials and professional accomplishments. I sent him a message that evening, deliberately vague. My name is Imani Mitchell. I'm married to Terrence. There are things about your family I believe we should discuss. Would you be willing to meet? His response came the next morning, just 4 words, Cornerstone Cafe, Sunday noon. The drive to Boston gave me too much time to doubt myself. What if Deshaun was worse than his family? What if this was a trap? By the time I pulled into the parking lot of the small cafe on the outskirts of the city, my hands were trembling. I spotted him immediately. Deshaun sat at a corner table angled to watch both the door and street, a posture that spoke of habitual vigilance. He stood when our eyes met, uncertainty flickering across his face. Up close, the resemblance to Terrence was stronger yet somehow more distant, like looking at what Terrence might have become in a kinder universe. Imani, he said, offering a hand rather than a hug. You look nothing like the wedding photo they keep on the mantel. They still have our wedding photo displayed? I couldn't hide my surprise. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Tamika points to it whenever she mentions you, usually while saying something like, she was the best Terrence could do. The casual cruelty shouldn't have shocked me anymore, but it still stung. You visit them? Christmas every 3 years. Deshaun gestured toward the chair opposite him. Enough for appearances, not enough for genuine connection. They accept it because acknowledging my complete absence would raise questions in their social circle. I sat, ordering coffee when the waitress approached. Deshaun waited until she left before leaning forward. So, what disaster prompted this meeting? Terrence finally showed his true colors? The directness caught me off guard. I'd planned to ease into the conversation, but Deshaun's bluntness demanded equal honesty. He's planning to humiliate me at our anniversary dinner next weekend, public toast to being free, followed by a t-shirt proclaiming our marriage a disappointment. I kept my voice steady. I found out he's been moving money out of our accounts. Your mother helped plan the whole thing. Deshaun's expression didn't change, but something hardened behind his eyes. Sounds about right. Dramatic public scenes are Tamika's specialty. He studied me. Most people would just file for divorce and leave. I tried the keep the peace approach for 6 years. It didn't work. I met his gaze directly. Now I want to understand what I'm really dealing with. For the next hour, Deshaun painted a picture of the family I thought I'd married into. Quincy Mitchell had built his financial services firm through connections rather than ethics, cutting corners and leveraging secrets he knew about influential people. Tamika, with her society connections, provided access to wealthy clients while carefully crafting the family's respectable image. My first mistake was being too good at math, Deshaun explained, a bitter smile playing at his lips. I joined the firm after college, part of Dad's grand plan. 3 months in, I noticed discrepancies in certain client accounts. Small percentages skimmed systematically over years. When he confronted his father, Quincy offered justifications about management fees clients had verbally approved. When Deshaun pushed back, threatening to report the irregularities, the family response was swift and absolute. They gave me a choice, fall in line or be erased. Deshaun's voice remained even, but his knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. I chose erasure. Left town that night with what I could pack in my car. By morning, my bank accounts were frozen, my credit cards canceled, and my name removed from the company website. And Terrence? I asked softly. Terrence called once, about a week later, said he wanted to understand my side. Pain flashed across Deshaun's face. Then I heard Dad's voice in the background asking who he was talking to. Terrence said no one and hung up. That was 12 years ago. The casual betrayal felt familiar, echoing Terrence's treatment of me. He never mentioned having a brother, not once in 6 years. Deshaun nodded as if this confirmed something. Terrence was always desperate for their approval. I was the heir, he was the spare, until I wasn't, and he got everything he ever wanted, including their full attention, which is both a gift and a curse. They controlled everything, I murmured, remembering Renaya's words. Even who he married. Especially that. Deshaun's gaze softened with something like sympathy. Let me guess. They introduced you. Tamika probably mentioned how perfect you'd be for Terrence within 5 minutes of meeting you. The accuracy sent a chill through me. We'd met at a charity gala Tamika had insisted Terrence attend. She'd called me refreshingly unpretentious when Terrence introduced us, what I'd taken as a compliment now revealed as calculation. They wanted someone they could control, I realized aloud. Someone grateful to be included in their world who wouldn't ask too many questions. And when you eventually did, the countdown to replacement began. I felt sick. They never saw me as family. I was always temporary. We moved to a small park after the cafe, continuing our conversation on a bench overlooking a pond. The afternoon light softened as Deshaun shared more about the family dynamics I'd married into. With each story, the pieces of my shattered life seemed to realign into a new pattern, one where I wasn't the failure but the inevitable casualty of a toxic system. I have something you should see, Deshaun said eventually, retrieving a folder from his messenger bag. After I left, I took certain precautions, insurance, if you will. The folder contained copies of original partnership documents for Mitchell Financial. According to the paperwork, the firm had been founded by Quincy and his father as equal partners. Upon the grandfather's death, the ownership was meant to be split between Quincy and his sons. Dad had the documents rewritten after I left, Deshaun explained. These are the originals.